I have wanted to make content for the longest time, but I just could never get myself to start. So I made a huge list of reasons that would basically force me to do it. Otherwise, I knew I was going to regret it forever. And so, first off, I genuinely enjoy helping people. Making somebody's life even a little bit better is something that is very rewarding for me, not even on some altruism stuff, but even selfishly. Knowing that I have a positive influence just makes me feel better, and it's kind of what gives me importance in this world because we all have emotions that make us feel good, make us feel alive. And for me, that's seeing my impact on other people. And content, in my opinion, is the best way to do that because it has the furthest reach. On top of that, I'd be lying if I said recognition isn't a huge motivating factor for me. Humans are inherently status seeking, and this is directly related to, how I tie my status to myself. But I'll talk more about the social influence and, social proof part later. If we just stick to the personal side, I know that if I have to teach a concept or I have to document a challenge, kind of like my 30-day basketball series that I did, where I tried to practice my shot every day, it actually makes me a better person. Because if I post it online, I can't just half ass it because that means people can see it. And whether people are keeping up or not with the challenges that I do, that doesn't really matter for my personality type. Because for me, I don't want to be the person who puts something, does day one, day two, and then just quits. If I say I'm doing a 30-day challenge, I will do all 30 days to the best of my ability. And so posting online for me is just an upgraded form of like accountability, especially because it plays so well to my personality type where I kind of care about what other people think. As for the long form videos, these are more for, giving advice and just, teaching and having a discussion. And so what I learned back, when I was doing private tutoring and stuff like that, is that if I can't teach a concept, I don't know it myself. And that the best way to learn is to actually have the mindset that I'm going to teach it. And here I'm not teaching things that wouldn't be useful in real life, like a video game tutorial or some brain rot thing. So that means that even selfishly, I want to take my own advice. I want my advice to be as good as possible because I would have already been doing this stuff out of passion and for my own success. So putting it on YouTube just gives me another reason that I need to keep going, but that I also need to make sure that my advice actually works. It's backed by, science, but also backed by my own personal experience. Otherwise, I, risk my own reputation, which I take very seriously. And even the advice side itself is selfishly, useful for me because when people ask me a question about, teaching, starting a teaching business or improving something like their personal finances, I don't have to keep repeating the same advice over and over again to this one specific person. I can just, condense all of that into a video, put more time into that video. That way I don't have to explain this concept to multiple people. And I'm basically building a library of like what I consider my best advice. So on top of not having to, waste my own time, I'm actually helping other people by not wasting their time because that means they can go to the sections that they actually need and then come and ask me questions in like the comments or something. I'd even hope that, if I have kids or something like that, they could look back on my videos, not just to see what I was like at the time, but also gain some of the knowledge that I'm trying to deliver with this YouTube channel and with content in general. So in a sense, for me, it kind of acts like a personal archive. I really do wish, like when I was younger, I took more pictures of myself, or I captured a bit more memories, especially when I was like 18 or 19, so that I could better understand my thought process at that time, and then be able to look back, know what I was kind of going through at that time, and then give better advice to somebody else who asks me that's 18 or 19. At least by documenting my stuff now, I can check a year from now, I can check for 5 years from now, to see basically how far I've came, in my skills, in my mindset, even the way that I talk to a camera. Like I'm hoping all of these things progress. One of the biggest things that every single video will help me with is talking, explaining myself more clearly, being a better storyteller, not overthinking, but also not over explaining. All of this is going to become more and more important to garner people's attention because that's going to be a very hard thing to do in the future. And you need all of that for social influence. So these are all things that I would work on anyway. I am just now doing it in a fashion that's going to expedite the process, but which is done through making content. And so here's the thing, everything that I already talked about is basically inherent, meaning that even if I barely get any views, I still get all of the benefits of improving my skills, documenting my life, and constantly questioning my beliefs and making sure that my arguments are bulletproof. So even if I don't expect this channel to blow up, especially in its current state, I'm kind of fine with that because of all the benefits that I already talked about. But I do wish it does reach people, and if it does, that's when the external opportunities can come in. Content creation can open your doors to things that people would dedicate their lives for, like starting a business or getting job opportunities, even smaller things like being invited to social events or creating your own social events where you can bring people together based off of your common idea or common goal. You basically just get a shortcut to anything that your content itself aligns with because you've already built a reputation that's kind of the leverage that you only get if you put yourself out there and people watch your stuff. Another big reason for me is connections. Content gives me basically a reason to reach out to people that I'd never be able to meet otherwise. And also, with enough following, you can actually connect with people that you yourself look up to or have always wanted to learn from. And if your content aligns with theirs enough, plus you have people watching your stuff anyway, they'll usually be down for something like a collaboration because what you're giving them in return for their time and advice is your platform. There's also the factor of social proof, meaning that if people are already paying attention to you, it kind of signals that you are worth listening to compared to somebody who hasn't had any of this social proof. And so that's not even a malicious thing. It's just human nature. We'd all rather be around people that have the things that we are working towards. And honestly, a platform with followers is one of the biggest things that a lot of people are looking for. Just think about the podcast collabs that you have seen. I won't really name any names, but in my head, there's only one reason that certain people are getting invited to sit with such highly sought after guests, and it's the social media presence that they bring with them. I'll talk about why this is so underrated and is even bigger than celebrity status. Like content creation, being known for that is way bigger than being known for whatever other celebrities are known for, like actors. But for me personally, I'll just talk about it. Genuinely, I do enjoy collaboration, and I want to build something like a platform where I can kind of surround myself with more like-minded people because finding people that fit into your niche in real life isn't always easy, but online everybody is already there, and successful people always try and leverage the tools that they have to meet people that are more like them. And online is the biggest tool. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the social influence that you build if you do have an audience. So, yes, that can be misused. People do scam their audiences all the time. But I can talk about myself personally. I do think I am less prone to that because I have the money situation handled with my own stuff, assuming that there is no big tragedy and I still have, a relatively stable income source. And that's because I have a pretty moderate lifestyle myself compared to what I bring in as a salary from my job and also what I already have saved. I do understand the benefits of making money from what you already would be doing. I think it's a win win. People want to pay for your stuff and you want to make money. Of course, you never truly know until you are in that situation. But the thing that's kind of driving that opinion for me is that I value my reputation basically more than anything. And honestly, sometimes that puts me in a bad situation that I wouldn't prefer. An example I can give you is like if somebody asks me to meet at this time and I say yes, and then something comes up and I'm kind of busy, I will do everything I can to still show up because I gave my word. So it can be kind of a weakness in some senses, but when it's related to me building something out of my passion, I do think it's going to help me stay on track. Imagine you also just get to partner with a company that you already use and genuinely like. You would recommend them anyway, but now you're getting paid for it, and you're probably getting some behind the scenes or early insights. Those are all massive benefits, and it doesn't stop there because let's just say one day I want to launch my own product, and instead of having to spend a lot of money and making tons of ads and like shoving it down my audience's throat, I get to do all these things without such aggressive marketing because I've already gained the trust of people by giving them good advice. We've seen tons of examples of YouTubers who don't even have a good reputation necessarily, but they release their own product and then a bunch of people are buying it just for the reason that they have social influence. But now let's go into the cons that kind of held me back from making this decision even faster of starting YouTube, but then also moving to different platforms. So the first thing that comes to my mind was always, what would other people think? This is especially tough for me because like I have a good view of myself. I feel like I've done quite a bit of things in my life to garner some, respect from other people, some success. And especially because I've done all these things following the quote unquote right path. So it's very hard when you have had success to give yourself permission to make mistakes, especially in public, because you feel like people are watching what you're doing when you're posting online. And then if you kind of mess up, or you're not getting the attention you thought you were going to get, it can be very tough. It kind of changes, what people think of you. There's like a little bit of an identity shift because the people that know me from work or from school might view the things that I'm doing online, which again aren't necessarily bad, but it might be viewed as kind of cringe. Putting yourself out there, I feel like until you become successful is cringe, especially when you're starting off. You're not as good as you're going to be when you do this for like a full year. And so all that stuff is pretty tough, especially if you feel like you've already been on the right path and now there's something that, there's a risk associated with. Having a public failure stings way more than if it were something private. One thing that could cause a failure is, having to talk about controversial topics. The nature of what I talk about, I'd say, is pretty wholesome in the fact that I'm trying to help people improve, but it could be misunderstood, especially with, how self-improvement is looked at these days. It could be viewed as controversial. If I, for example, like if I talk about how I think a lot of the reason why people aren't successful or don't have what they want in life is entirely up to them, especially if they live in the West. By some people that aren't in this niche of what we talk about, if that can be taken out of context, it can really hurt your reputation in real life. Unlike most skills that you can just practice on your own and then after, showcase everybody, like, you're playing a game of basketball, something you can practice on your own, then put it online. Content creation is one of those things that you just have to do it in front of other people. And the thing is, if you want to grow, you are more than likely also going to grow the amount of hate you get. So it's very hard to deal with that. You could be somebody who's very secure in themselves. I would say, for the most part, I am. But I'm not gonna lie. Like, having harsh critiques online could definitely phase me, because all of that judgment is tied to like my persona. Because especially on platforms like Instagram or TikTok, your content isn't just what you are saying, it's kind of directly tied to you. It's all a personal brand where, if you say one thing wrong, people can judge based off of completely irrelevant things like how you look or how you talk, or, what your lifestyle is. So it's not just feedback on what you're saying, which would be good on an ideal world, it's also just feedback on external factors. When you are in a niche like self improvement, with these videos where I'm trying to give you guys advice, you inevitably will be compared with other people, and those other people could be further along than you in the whole self improvement journey. They could just have a better situation than you. They could have better genetics. They could have a crazier physique. They could have more money, more resources. All of that comparison will, get put onto you, especially if you are in this niche. That comparison can be very motivating, but if it's done, way too hard and way too fast, it can also just completely crush your, feeling of how you are perceived by other people. The other thing that is more likely for me than anything that I've mentioned before is opportunity cost. Making content takes a lot of time out of your day, even if it doesn't look like it. Like, I've had to re-record two parts of this video. Like, I've had to re-record them 3 times, and that's just not something you see. But what it does is it takes away time from my actual job, which is my main source of income, or the things that, I already know how to monetize, like my teaching ability or my mentoring ability. So all of that does make it a little bit of a gamble with my time that I could be spending, spending time with my friends and family. Instead, I am spending the time to talk to a camera by myself, in a basement. And then the last thing is, what can increase the opportunity cost, the perfectionism aspect. When you're putting something online, it feels that much more important to make sure things are at least a little bit professional and polished over. And so that whole idea of professionalism can also just cause you to procrastinate because the task is much harder, if there's going to be a bunch of people watching and you have to make sure that you re-record parts where you started way too much or whatever the case is. Ultimately, with everything I said, I still think it is 100% worth it. I think these risks can actually play to my benefit because they'll make sure to keep me in check and remind me that above all else, I have to stay kind of true to what I believe in and make sure I'm doing my research first and putting the audience first. Also, since my main concern is related to what other people would think, I think it gives me a huge chance to get out of my comfort zone and not live life just because other people tell me I need to live it a certain way. It makes life way more interesting to not be held back by other people's opinions. And me personally, I just don't want to keep overthinking about those things because, like, who knows? Maybe the people that are first initially think it's cringe are actually the people that would instead commend me for taking this step. And if it can help somebody else, I do think it is a worthwhile endeavor to take.